Hello. So we are back with our phonetics. In this video, we'll be looking at the organs of speech. In the first video on linguistics, we discussed different branches of linguistics where I involuntarily made a mistake. So I would like you to look at these classification here so that that mistake can be covered. Phonetics can be articulatory phonetics, auditory phonetics, and acoustic phonetics. Articulatory phonetics is about how the speech organs produce speech sounds, how sounds are articulated in a language. Auditory phonetics is about how these sounds are received and processed by the ears and then through the nervous system and the brain. Acoustic phonetics is a study of the physical properties of speech sounds in their transmission. These second and the third are specialized areas, and we are at this introductory level concerned with articulatory phonetics, how the vocal organs are, how the vocal organs function, and how they produce speech sounds. So I just wanted to add that as a correction. And yeah, so we are looking at articulatory phonetics and we will look at the organs of speech and speech mechanism, which are the organs involved in producing speech sounds and how does the speech happen. In English, as in most languages of the world, the it's the pulmonary air that we use. The pulmonary air, that means air from the lungs, is pushed upwards. The movement upwards is indicated by this word aggressive, and there is an airstream that is going up from the lungs. So constantly as we speak, this is happening. From the lungs, air is aggressively pushed up into the throat region, and this is the throat region which we call larynx. Into the larynx, then out through the mouth and the nose. That is how the constantly when we speak, the sounds are produced. The initial impetus comes from the lungs where there is an aggressive airstream. Ingressive airstream is also possible. When you make a sound like that is an ingressive airstream, but that is not normally used in production of speech sounds in English or any other language, though to show some emotions we may use such ingressive sounds. Pulmonic airstream mechanism means how the pulmonic air is pushed out into the larynx. So that is where we get the air for producing our speech sounds. That is the lungs. From the lungs we get it, and it is aggressive airstream, pulmonic aggressive airstream. And this air that comes from the lungs enters the larynx. This chamber here is larynx, and this pipe which comes from the lungs is called trachea. From the lungs you have a pipe coming, and when we breathe either through the nose or the mouth, the air gets into pharynx and it goes into the laryngeal chamber and then goes straight down to the lungs, where the lungs absorbs the oxygen and pushes carbon dioxide out. We know that's one function of lungs, but speech is also something that originates from the air that comes out of the lung. So it enters the trachea, and let us see here. There is another tube. I'm sorry. The trachea enters the laryngeal chamber. This is the last part of the trachea. It goes on down until the uh, lungs is reached. So this is larynx, and here there is another canal which is actually broader, bigger, and that canal is the food pipe. It is also called esophagus. So when we eat something, food comes in and it should go through this pipe. And this epiglottis here will close this windpipe when we eat our food, or food will go into the lungs and that can be fatal. So that is how that part of the body functions. And then the air flows out into the mouth, into the nose, and you have many organs here. Lips are there, teeth, two rows of teeth. then the nasal cavity is here, the roof of the mouth is here, tongue is here. So that is this is a diagram which shows us the main speech organs in our head from the larynx onwards. So we look at larynx first. Pulmonic aggressive air, that is air from the lungs that comes out, enters the larynx within the throat. So larynx is located within our throat. And larynx is the topmost part of the windpipe or trachea. Trachea is this pipe that goes until the lungs, and it's the topmost part of the trachea is called the larynx. And the windpipe and food pipe begin at the same region. As we said, it begins here. This is the food pipe, this is the windpipe, and epiglottis acts as a kind of fold that closes the trachea while we eat. Larynx, this chamber here, is sometimes called voice box, as the pitch and volume of speech is controlled here. This is a very important part in our speech mechanism. We saw the lungs and air comes out, and now we are in the larynx. And let's see what happens within the larynx. Within the larynx is located the vocal cords. Located inside the larynx, stretched across from front to back, are two folds or mucous membrane called vocal cords. These folds can totally close the air passage from the lungs. It can totally close, like here, this membrane have totally closed this cavity. It prevents air from coming out of the lungs. This is, you're looking into the trachea through your throat. Normally we can't do that, but with a special equipment, doctors will or scientists will be able to look at your vocal cords through your mouth. And if this position is a totally closed position, air will not come out at this position. Sound also will not be able to be produced at this position. So these folds can totally close the air passage from the lungs or remain open in various degrees, remain fully open or remain apart in varying degrees, creating audible vibration when air passes out. So here it is totally open. So open vocal cord area. This opening is called glottis. The opening between the vocal cords. This is one vocal cord and this is the second vocal cord. In between there is a space. The space comes when the vocal cords are retracted, and the vocal cords can be in various degrees of closure or opening. And here when the air comes out of the lungs like this, and this is a cross section you're looking from above. Imagine you're looking down like this, you will be seeing the vocal cords like this, and see the circle that is supposed to be the vocal cords here. And as the air passes out, it passes through the vocal cords. It either passes freely or it passes with obstruction. When there is obstruction, there will be vibration of the vocal cords. Depending on this, your voice is first modulated in your larynx. Let's look at the vocal cords again. This is a picture of the same person's vocal cord in while speech is happening. Maybe a millisecond or so of movements. A continuous sequence of photographs for a very short period of speech where you can see the vocal cord slowly opening, and it reaches an open position, and then it again closes, opens. It keeps on moving in various degrees of closure and opening in the production of speech. So when I am speaking, my vocal cords are vibrating at an immense speed, which is beyond the imagination or comprehension of our mind. They're moving in such immense rapidity. This photograph has been taken using a laryngoscope. So you can see here how the vocal cords keep opening and closing while we speak. Imagine this is only a fraction of a second or so. So vocal cords gives the sounds you produce voice. If there is vibration, there is voice. There is no vibration, there is no voice. Let us read this. When the vocal cords are not fully closed or fully open, they vibrate in different ways, causing voice or phonation. So the sounds involving the vibration of the vocal cords are called voiced sounds. In English, as in other languages, When we produce some of the speech sounds, there will be vibration of the vocal cords or they will be involved. Such sounds are called voiced sounds. And when the vocal cords are totally retracted and the glottis is totally open, there will be no vibration, and such sounds are called voiceless or unvoiced sounds. In English, consonant sounds have both voiced and voiceless varieties. All vowel sounds in all languages are voiced. That's a very interesting thing. We would think of the vowels as weak sounds, but actually vowels are very strong and all the vowel sounds are voiced. Let us take a look at how this voiced and voiceless works. If you keep your fingers on your throat and try to say d or v, g, z, you can feel the vibration on your throat because d, v, g and z are voiced sounds. These are voiceless sounds, or in the production of t, k, s, etc., the vocal cords are not involved. When we say f, there may be a vibration because after f sound we have produced a sound which is a vowel. That takes us to the point that you cannot actually make any sound without using a vowel as well normally. That's why we have consonant. Each consonant has a name. For example, T, we say it's T. So you cannot say it is t, t. You have to say it is T. That is the name of the consonant letter in English. And in order to articulate, we use an E along with it, which is a vowel sound. So vowels are very essential units in speech. We will look at it in great detail in the next video. In the production of all the vowels, there is voicing. In the production of some consonants, there is no voicing. We call them voiceless or unvoiced consonant sounds. Now we look at the speech organs above larynx. They are the articulators. They are above the larynx. And what is written here? Above the larynx, that is from pharynx onwards. This is a chamber called pharynx. Active and passive articulators modify the airstream into speech sounds. We have many organs here, some of which are called passive articulators, some are called active articulators. They help to articulate the sounds of a language once they have passed the larynx. That is, the voicing or being voiceless is determined here. Beyond that, everything happens in this region. We look at the chief parts. You have tongue here. You have your upper row of teeth here. Lower row of teeth here. Upper teeth here. You have lower lip, upper lip. So two lips, two sets of teeth up and down. And if you feel with your tongue tip just above your teeth, there is a hard lumpy part. It's a ridge. It's called teeth ridge. It is also called alveolar ridge. So that is a portion just above your teeth. You can feel with your tongue. That is teeth ridge. It's a position, important position. Then you have the roof of the mouth, which is divided into the hard palate and the soft palate. We'll come into details later. And you have the nasal cavity here. And the soft palate can be moved up and down, and it can sometimes close nasal cavity. In most English sounds, the nasal cavity is closed and air flows through the mouth. In some sounds, nasal cavity is partly open, and sometimes sound passes entirely through the nasal cavity. We will look at all those things in the coming slides. We talked about articulators. Those organs of speech that do not move are called passive articulators. They are upper teeth, upper lip, here upper lip, teeth, both upper and lower, they are passive. Alveolar ridge is a passive articulator. Hard palate here, hard palate is this part, your roof of the mouth. Just after the teeth ridge, it goes on until half is the hard palate, which is if you feel with your finger, it's hard. And if you feel even beyond that, it may be a little difficult. You will find it's a softer part. That's the back part of the roof, which is called soft palate or velum. So you have the soft palate. Soft palate moves, as I said, it can be moved to close the nasal chamber, but still it is generally classified as a passive articulator because in articulation of most sounds, the soft palate remains there and the tongue moves upwards and downwards to create various strictures here in this place. We look at strictures also soon. So passive articulators are upper lip, teeth, alveolar ridge. Teeth ridge is otherwise called alveolar ridge, hard palate, soft palate. And the two important active articulators are the tongue and the lower lip. Tongue is a very active articulator. It can move in many different ways. And the lower lip is also an active articulator. It can press against the upper lip. It can press against the upper teeth, causing different strictures. Strictures means narrowing. We need to look at the parts of the tongue. Tongue being a very important active articulator has many marked regions. The tip of the tongue is here. The tongue tip is the part just behind the lower teeth. Blade of the tongue is the tapering part lying opposite to the teeth ridge. This is the blade. The side is called blade. Front of the tongue is the part just below the hard palate. The roof of the mouth, hard palate here and soft palate here. The part just below the hard palate is called front of the tongue. And the part below the soft palate is called the back of the tongue. These labeling become very essential when later on we look at the vowels. When we classify vowels, we talk about front vowel and back vowel, etc. So front and back. So that is the different parts of the tongue. And this picture gives us a more greater clarity about a few of the speech organs. This is the hard palate, roof of the mouth. Little beyond it is a soft palate. The back part of the soft palate has a region like this. It is called the uvula. Then you have the upper row of teeth, the lower teeth. You have the tongue here. Tongue, tip of the tongue, blade of the tongue, front of the tongue, and back of the tongue. Back of the tongue is not visible from here. Lower lip, upper lip. So that is a greater clarity can be brought into the whole thing with this picture. Um, now, we talked about the articulators, passive articulators and active articulators, and when they engage, articulation happens. Articulation is defined by the way in which the flow of air through the mouth and the nose are restricted in many ways by the movement of the active articulators, primarily lower lip and the tongue. And these narrowing caused by the tongue and the lip is called strictures. So here we look at this picture here. Let us see if we can blow it up a bit. Here I have divided the tongue here into tip, front, back. Root is this part is called the root of the tongue. You have the upper teeth and lower teeth. You have the alveolar ridge here, hard palate here, velum here, uvula is marked here, and you have the pharyngeal chamber here. So let us look at strictures. So when the tongue moves up and down, the front of the tongue or the back of the tongue, there are many strictures occurring or narrowing occurring which affects the quality of the sounds. Let us look at that. The first kind of stricture is complete closure, involving the complete closure of airflow, temporarily of course, but complete closure. One example is this, where the back of the tongue is pressed against the soft palate, pressing the back of the tongue against the soft palate. And you can see the soft palate has blocked the nasal cavity. That is the normal position. It blocks the nasal cavity when we speak. But only in the articulation of n sound, sound, ing sound, etc., it will be open partly or fully. But here you can see that the back of the tongue is pressed against the soft palate. It is an example for complete closure. That's a kind of stricture. And you can press your lips together and then cause a stricture here. In the articulation of p and b sound, you have both lips coming together and the nasal cavity is blocked. You have a stricture here. When it is released, you have p and b sound. P is a voiceless sound and B is a voiced sound. K voiceless, G voiced. Now another kind of stricture is found. Again, same. Another example for complete closure is the tongue tip pressing against the alveolar ridge. The tip of the tongue against the alveolar ridge. T, t, we produce in that position. In English, normally the tongue will not go beyond the alveolar ridge. The going beyond the alveolar ridge or teeth ridge is called post-alveolar position. In Indian speech, t like tip is or tongue sometimes is heard as tip or tongue. So it is t, and instead of d, we may say d. So in both these cases, the tongue goes beyond. This closure happens a little beyond the teeth ridge, towards the hard palate. It goes beyond. It is a post-alveolar position. This is just for your information. In the production of n and ing, again you have the soft palate being lowered. Here in these three, the soft palate is raised and closed the chamber. Here it is lowered. In these two positions, soft palate is lowered and air flows out through the nose as well. In position, you find the lips blocking and air flowing through the nose. In n and ing position, it is not the lips that causes the constriction. It is the tip of the tongue against the alveolar ridge blockage and air is flowing exclusively through the nose. Well, this is not meant to confuse you. It is just to know that there can be complete closure. Here, complete closure using different organs of speech. And strictures continued, there can be intermittent closure and partial closure as well. Intermittent closure is a kind of thrill where one articulator taps rapidly against another. Typically, it is a tongue tip against the alveolar ridge. In English, in RP, as defined in the British kind of English, you don't have a sound, don't have thrill sounds, but a kind of thrill R is heard in some varieties of English, including Indian variety, where we would talk about river and thrill, and rapid, etc. In English, it would be rapid and thrill and river. In Indian speech and in many other varieties of English, including Scottish varieties, in some Scottish varieties, you have a thrilled R, which is a constant tap of the tongue against the alveolar ridge, producing R sound. So that is intermittent closure. And you can have partial closure, in which one point is partly blocked, but air flows through some other part. So the tip of the tongue presses against the alveolar ridge and air flows under the tongue, you have the L sound. L sound. That's an example for a partial closure made at one point of the mouth in a way that airstream is allowed to escape around the sides of the closure. And that is why L is called a lateral sound. Air escapes laterally. So this brings together all the speech organs and the positions which will help us to describe the consonant sounds of English when we look at consonants. Bilabial, labium means lip, bilabial means both lips, upper and lower. In p, b and m in English, consonants, both lips are involved. Dental sounds are sounds in which your tip of the tongue is pressing under the teeth. It just comes out a bit like th and the in English. They are dental sounds. The tip of the tongue comes a little outside your mouth, little bit in a dental sound like th and the. Labiodental, again it is the lower lip. Yeah, labiodental is the lower lip against the upper teeth. V. It is the labium, the lower lip moving and touching the upper teeth. Dental is the tongue and the teeth. Labiodental is the lip and the teeth. Alveolar, as we said, it is the ridge part where the tongue touches the alveolar ridge. The tip or the blade of the tongue is the point of articulation. T, D, S, Z, N. You have alveolar sounds. If you try to make sounds after me, T, d, s, z, n. You will feel how the tip of the tongue touches the alveolar region. Post-alveolar, as I said, your tongue moves a little beyond the alveolar region. It is uh, nearly the beginning of the hard palate and the tip of the tongue. In English, we have r sound, the thrilled r and the normal r, which is r. It is in that region, post-alveolar region, that we produce. In English, there are no other post-alveolar sounds. But in Indian languages, we have so many post-alveolar sounds. For example, t would be t, d would be d, and n would be n. All those are post-alveolar sounds. Then you have palato-alveolar, where the tongue tip and the blade are kind of pressed against the hard palate, the tip against the alveolar region and the front of the tongue against the hard palate. It is pressed against it, arched up. You have sh, j, ch, j, etc. Palato-alveolar means your tongue is very close to the alveolar ridge and the hard palate. Palatal is the front of the tongue is moving up towards the hard palate, as in producing this semi-vowel here. And you have velar sounds in English. K, g, and ng are the velar sounds, which are articulated by the soft palate with the active articulation of the back part of the tongue. Back of the tongue. Tongue is always the active articulator, and soft palate, hard palate, etc. are passive articulators. Glottal sounds are sounds produced in the glottal region. In English, we have the ha sound, which is a glottal sound. So here, to make it more clear or to commit it to your memory, you have bilabial sounds involving both lips, labial to labium, bilabial. Dental, your lip and the upper teeth. Labiodental, your lower lip and the upper teeth. Alveolar, tongue against the alveolar ridge. Post-alveolar, tongue moving a little beyond the alveolar ridge, somewhere here. Palato-alveolar, tip of the tongue and the front moving, arching up towards the soft, hard palate and the tooth ridge. Palatal means the front of the tongue moving towards the hard palate. Velar, back of the tongue moving towards the velum or the soft palate. Glottal sound is within the vocal cord area. So that is how we have looked at all the um, organs of speech in English. We looked at the difference between articulatory phonetics and other branches of phonetics. We are interested in the articulation of sounds, and we looked at the organs of speech. We saw how the speech mechanism worked, how the pulmonic air stream flow up from the lungs into the larynx and then causing the voicing or lack of voicing, and then encountering the articulators inside the mouth, the nose, and the strictures caused by the active articulators moving towards the passive articulators. So this is how we explain the speech sounds of English and speech mechanism in the simplest manner possible. I would recommend that you listen a second time or third time if you need to, because these are foundational things which will be very important in describing the speech sounds of English. So thank you very much. In the next video, hopefully we will be looking at the vowels of English.